Welcome to Globespan 24x7 as we come to you here from New York and, of course, in Guyana as we celebrate the Monday night program. Today, we want to extend to all our Muslim viewers in Guyana and around the world, Eid Mubarak greetings. You have sacrificed a month of fasting, and today, of course, the joyous celebration of Eid. So Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim viewers. This evening, we want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course, to Devin Bisu, our technical specialist. We want to thank you, our audience, for joining us tonight, and of course, to our sponsors who help us carry this program along. Tonight, we are very honored and privileged to have with us one of Guyana's outstanding sons. And I say that with a very deep sense of humility. Mr. Komal Samaroo has been, along with Dr. Isu Prasad, have built Demerara Distillers Limited to one of the world's best run corporation. He's currently the chairman of Demerara Distillers Limited and also the chairman of Demerara Bank, among his many other portfolios. So, Mr. Samaroo, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'm delighted to be here to share my thoughts with you tonight.
Thank you. And of course, with me, my co-host, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose, welcome.
Thank you, Charles, and welcome, Mr. Samaroo. It's a pleasure having you tonight. You are one of the big giants in Guyana, as Charles told me.
No, I'm your humble servant.
Okay.
Mr. Samaroo, before we get into all the questions, why did you're one of Guyana's most successful accountant. Why did you get into accounting, or was that your only option in your early life?
You know, Charles, in high school, I was a natural science student. I did no business subject in high school. But when I finished high school with 8 subjects at the GCE, including distinction in mathematics, I could not find a job.
Wow.
Over a year, I couldn't find a job. And I eventually found a job in an office. And my boss said to me after a few months, "What do you plan to do?" I would suggest that you pursue accounting. And he advised me to pursue, first of all, the Institute of Chartered Accountants exam in England, and then afterwards to do the ACCA. So my transition into accounting took a bit of adjustment. Enjoying it very much.
Oh, that's interesting. So was your first job with Guyana Distillers or was somewhere else?
I had 10 months with the firm of HB Gajraj Limited, where I was an accounts clerk writing up the receivable ledger. And after 10 months, I got a job with Booker's Rum Company, a job in the bottling plant where I was keeping the inventory of the rum that were in the vats and that were bottled in those days under a brand called Booker's Fruit Cure and Booker's Liqueur Rums.
You still remember those names?
Yes.
And then you transition into the accounting department?
Yes. Well, then after a year, I thought that if I continue the way I was going, I will not make progress. So I took advantage of what was the Booker's after-hours study scheme and decided that I should study in the afternoon and work in the day. And then in 1971, classes of the Institute of Chartered Accountants that were being held at the Government Technical Institute and commenced studies there from 1971.
And then you finished
1974 and my ACCA in 1977.
Excellent. And but Ms. Samaroo, from your entire work experience, you were always, after you became qualified, I know Demerara Distillers Limited was the follow-up of Guyana Distillers Limited. So you started with GDL then and then move on to DDL?
Yes, because Rum Company eventually merged with Albion Distilleries and became Guyana Distilleries. And I rose up there to be the accountant of Guyana Distilleries. And when I was about to do my final exam, the company was nationalized. And Dr. Prasad agreed that I should go to London to complete my final exam. So I went to the UK in 1977, completed my ACCA, and came back to be appointed the Group Chief Accountant upon my return. The following year, I was appointed the Group Finance Controller and Corporate Secretary. And the following year, I became the Group Finance Director. So it was quite a rapid rise.
Yeah, I know. And then you became Managing Director in which year?
5 years after becoming Finance Director, I became.
And that was Managing Director of Guyana Distillers or DDL?
By then, in 1983, Guyana Distilleries and Diamond Liquors were merged to form Demerara Distillers.
I got you. And the office at that time was in Water Street. We're having a problem with your speaker, Mr. Samaroo.
Okay, the office was in Demerara Life Compound, and then later on, after we established a company which was previously the previous company, the CCI, the office was, Dr. Prasad was there at Farm, and I was in Georgetown.
Interesting. And you know, Mr. Samaroo, I want to let the audience know this, that I think Chairman Isu Prasad was the only person who called you Ram.
That is true. That is my middle name. And from the first time we met, he called me Ram. And that, remained that way until, his passing.
I remember, and to the audience out there, I was at one time the chief accountant for DDL under Mr. Samaroo as managing director. And Mr. Samaroo, we had our coordinators meeting, and I know Chairman would come in at side door in your office and say, Ram, how is Charles? Is he behaving himself? How is Stanley? How is, Sukbanga? How is, he had a really nice way of coming and talking to his staff at your meeting.
That is true. That is true. He was excellent in human relations. He had a way of disarming you, and you can't help but appreciating the sort of leadership that he provided during those difficult and challenging years, but it made our job much easier.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, Mr. Samaroo, and I tell everyone that I meet, I said, Dr. Isu Prasad and Komal Samaroo together, these two gentlemen single-handedly, together, build that great company called Demerara Distillers Limited. So, sir, our hats off to you, and to, of course, our late chairman, who did a marvelous job, and you had no better mentor than Dr. Isu Prasad.
Well, thank you, Charles. But I like to say that every member of the team played a role. While Dr. Prasad, was the leader and he pulled me along with him, I think we had a great team at all levels in the organization. So, we continue to build that team even to this day. It takes everybody to make the company successful.
Without doubt. And I remember Steve Gopal telling me that he said, Charles, chairman has the Midas touch, but the MD, which is Komal Samaroo, he's the man behind the scenes, so he gets everything done. And you guys had a really great working relationship. And as you said, you had a great team at DDL. I was privileged to be part of that for a short period. And I can attest that you do have a great team there for that great company. So, Mr. Samaroo, DDL has come a long way. And I know you have great plans for the company as chairman now. Without divulging all the, the secrets of whatever you want to do, where do you expect to take DDL in the near future?
Well, Charles, we embark on a major diversification program. As you know, the company in the alcohol sector, there is so much competition in the world. And while we have been successful, I believe that the knowledge that we have gained from that sector, we can apply to other areas of agriculture processing. And so we've started to expand our juice and dairy operation, which are in the planning stage, and to build a whole portfolio of agro-based products, developing it in the domestic, regional, and hopefully the international marketplace.
And is it DDL doing it alone, or are you having farmers who are working with you?
Yeah, we want to focus on the areas that we are good at, and that is processing and marketing. So we are contracting farmers to grow fruits and to supply us in a supply chain arrangement. As you know, historically, these supply chain arrangements outside of the rice industry did not exist for areas like fruit processing and so on. So we are building those supply chain now, encouraging and contracting farmers to grow a variety of fruits, which we will purchase and process. In the case of the dairy side, we have an MOU with an Israeli company to establish an efficient dairy operation in Guyana that would feed the processing facility that we have invested. And we are at this point in time in the process of identifying suitable land and doing the project evaluation jointly with our partners from Israel.
Oh, that's excellent. Is there other integration you're looking at in terms of, I know you have launched different, like, of course, other companies within DDL, the umbrella body of DDL, but are you looking at other integration to bring in other industries that you are not necessarily part of at this time?
Yeah, well, there are two areas that we started about 20, 30 years ago. That is the shipping and logistics area. We have converted our property in Warren Schumacher Street, built the wharf there, and we are in the process of converting what is a wooden deck into a concrete deck that could allow for larger vessels and so on. So the shipping and logistics area is one that we are investing fairly significant amount of resources. And then we have the distribution company based on our knowledge of the domestic market and our distribution competences. We are at the moment both at the wholesale level and at the retail level, and those are businesses that will continue to grow. They do generate the sort of cash flow that you need for the more capital-intensive manufacturing and industrial operation. So it's a mix of businesses that provide us with the cash flow generation to put into the industries that require heavy capital investment.
And you are recently you're in the news, Mr. Samaroo, of converting the former head office of DDL into a world-class.
Yeah.
Is it Dubai? Is it Dubai in the Caribbean?
Well, you see, we had this building and we've been contemplating over many years what to do. And given the need for us to have a sort of more global network that will help our international marketing drive, we explored and we have been approved to be given a license to develop that building into a World Trade Center of Georgetown. There are over 320 World Trade Centers around the world. They provide all sorts of services, accommodation, some are hotels and so on. So we will provide a variety of services in this World Trade Center, network with other World Trade Centers around the world, and bring knowledge and information on international trade and opportunities that are available for us here in Guyana. So I believe that this could be a great service to the entire private sector, and it gives us a window to the rest of the world, understanding what is driving international trade and where there are opportunities that exist for products that we produce here.
And Mr. Samaroo, there's a parking problem in that area. How are you able to overcome that parking issue?
Yeah, that is always a problem. I was driving down Georgetown the other day, and I was seeing on both sides of the road vehicles are parked, and you drive in the middle, basically one lane. The entire city of Georgetown has a parking problem. In our yard there, our property goes to the end of to the next street. So we will have limited accommodation. And we're hoping that maybe the streets around there, maybe the railway embankment, we'll be able to engage with the relevant authorities to see how we can develop some parking within walking distance to that building.
But and before Dr. Rose come on, with that World Trade Center up, what you're doing there, it might require the need for multi-level parking in terms of having a building with parking garage, multi-level. Is that something that you're contemplating in the future?
You know, as the need arises, we have an open mind as to what solution is best appropriate for the problem. But like you, I'm concerned about, you know, the parking problems in the future. But if it requires multi-level parking, so be it.
That's why you're so successful, Mr. Samaroo. You're really a thinker ahead. Dr. Rose?
Good evening again, Mr. Samaroo, and welcome to this program. Folks, we have this executive chairman for DDL. Now, Mr. Samaroo, my first question to you is this. What does DDL produce? I know it's El Dorado rum. Beyond that, I don't know.
Good. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Rose, and thanks for your kind words of welcome. So I will give you a very quick review of DDL, what it is. We started out, right, the distilling industry started out taking the molasses that is produced from the sugar industry and converted to rum. Historically, the distillery was part of the sugar estate. But as time went by, it was separated into a separate entity by the then UK owners. As you know, rum became a staple on the British Navy, and that was one of the big trade where rums were shipped from Guyana and other Caribbean territories and blended and bottled in the UK and served on the British Navy. There was a daily tot that was given to the people on the Navy. That was finally abolished at the end of July 1970. That was basically the business. Now, when the company was nationalized in the mid-1970s, Guyana Distilleries and Diamond Liquors, which were the two entities, became part of a group called the Guyana Liquor Corporation Group. But those companies had minority shareholders, right? It was not totally owned by Bookers and by Jessels. And so Dr. Prasad became the chairman, and under his leadership, we start working on a diversification program and a process to make the operations much more competitive. So we, in the late 1980s, we built a plant to capture the carbon dioxide that comes out from the fermentation process when you ferment molasses to make rum. And we produce carbon dioxide and dry ice. And since we produce carbon dioxide, we established a plant to produce carbonated beverage. So we produced, we became the franchisees for Pepsi, we produce sparkling water, and we produce still products as well. So we produce non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverage. And later on in the 1990s, we purchased a small food processing operation from a gentleman who had a small company in Timeri. That company is Topco, and that business is what we are developing to be a juice and dairy manufacturer. We also do a small quantity of things like fruit mix that has virtually replaced imported raisin and currants used for making cake in Guyana, and things like jams and jelly. We also use alcohol to produce vinegar. So we are the dominant brand in the domestic market, all produced locally here, right at our plant. So that gives an idea of the range of products that we produce, Dr. Rose.
So DDL don't produce liquor only. I now understand it.
Yeah.
Now, you spoke about molasses. How do you measure molasses? In liters?
Tons.
Tons? Okay. How many tons of molasses DDL uses per year?
At the moment, we use between 70 and 80,000 tons of molasses.
So this means you have to import it because Guyana don't produce that amount?
Well, in the last 4 years, our needs exceeded what the sugar industry produced. So we have been producing over the last 4 years to complement what we get locally.
And where you import your molasses from? Which country?
We go out to tenders. There are about 4 brokers that we go out for requests for proposal each year. And we have very rigid specification. I think in the last couple of years, we've been getting from from countries like Mexico and other Central American countries. But depending on the source, on the quality and the quantity and the delivery schedules, there are a number of variables that determine what is the source of supply.
I know you're not part of Gaisuku, but would you advise Gaisuku to conform more on those estates into producing molasses only for Guyana?
We've had some discussions in that regard. There was some trials done at one stage that was not very successful. And earlier, when Enmore was closed, we had participated in a trial taking the cane juice and concentrating it and using the concentrated cane juice to produce rum. It could produce certain types of rums, but there are others that, other rums that requires a certain flavor profile that would require molasses. So I think that's an ongoing discussion that we're having to see, depending on where Gaisuku is heading, how we could influence them to convert some of the cane that they have into concentrated juice on a competitive basis, I have to say, because whatever we do has to be competitive. And once we can find that formula, I think it is something that could work. But that's a work in progress. Definitely a work in progress.
You may not know this, but you are the first business executive to appear in our program tonight.
Oh.
And this is very good. So let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Your markets, where do you sell your products? CARICOM, North America, Guyana, where you sell most of your products?
Most of our products are sold on the international market, the non-CARICOM market. And I probably should explain two things here. Historically, we were bulk rum suppliers. We produced bulk rum, we shipped in a tanker ship, it goes to Europe, and the bottlers there would buy it. And that worked very well until, the 1990s, as the WTO came into existence and trade preferences went. We had to look at new opportunities, and that is when we develop our brand, our El Dorado brand. So we have two revenue streams. We have a revenue stream of bulk rum that is exported to the large brand owners in the world, and we have the branded product, El Dorado, which we export to about 60 markets around the world. I will say this, that up to 2020, most of our export revenues came from bulk. But last year, 2021, was a defining year. It was the first year that our revenues from branded rums exceeded the revenue from bulk rum. So, and that's the direction in which we have been moving to take the business, put greater focus on brands. And of course, there are two different kinds of marketing that is required for bulk rum and than what is required for the brand marketing of El Dorado.
As you know, Banks DIH produces XM. You produce El Dorado. Trinidad produces rum. Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad. Barbados and Jamaica as well, and other countries. Which is your stiffest competition?
Okay. Let me say this. The biggest producers of rum in the region is Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. And the largest market for premium rum is the United States of America. And there is an arrangement that has been in existence since 1917 called the cover-over arrangement. Under that cover-over arrangement, the US government rebates to the government of Puerto Rico and US Virgin Islands all the taxes it collects on all the rums imported into the United States. So each year, somewhere between the region of $300 and $400 million go to the government of Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands in proportion to their exports to the US. And in those countries, there are distilleries that receive significant subsidies from this cover-over money. So I can say to you at this point in time 85% of the rums imported in the United States come from Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, okay? And only 15% is what everybody else compete for. We compete along with all the other producers for that 15%. Now, it is true that prior to us entering the market, rum was seen as a standard product. And the one thing that we did and pioneered, because we recognized that as a standard segment of the market, we could not be profitable. So we pioneered the aged rum segments in the market. And now we have a number of producers, in fact, most of the producers now going into that segment. So if you take the rum market as a whole, the largest supplier is 85% in the US. The world's largest rum market comes from Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. If you look at the trade data also, you will see that the largest exporter of rum to Canada is the United States of America. And the largest exporter of rum to the European Union is the United States of America. So that subsidized rum that is produced finds its way into all of these markets, right? Having said that, I will say that we have also embarked on significant strategies of differentiating ourselves from other rum brands. And that is why we have now gotten the Demerara rum registered at a GI, geographical indication, in Europe, so that one of our future marketing strategy that we're working on will be the global marketing of the Demerara origin. We're going to differentiate ourselves by origin. And that origin produced rum over centuries using particular processes in a particular environment and particular know-how, right? So it is a work in progress. It is an evolving market, and we are evolving our marketing strategy, growing the business as opportunities open up. We do have competition across the Caribbean, Jamaica. I will say in the branded rum business, Jamaica would be the largest. They have been in the branded business before we have been. Barbados would be probably the second. Dominican Republic is also a significant market. We would probably be number 4 after those. But in the very top end, in the deluxe category, El Dorado is a category leader.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I normally see XM, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15 or 20-year-old, or what have you. Is the same thing for DD El Dorado, 5-year-old, 10-year-old too?
Well, I don't want to talk for other companies, but I will say this, that rum is produced by the fermentation and distillation of molasses. And DDL is the only distiller in Guyana. I believe other companies, other brands that want to produce rum in Guyana has to import their bulk rum from other sources. That's as far as I can go. But I can say that DDL is the sole distiller in Guyana, and only the rum produced at our distillery can, under the rules of origin, be described as a product of Guyana.
Okay, thanks for telling that. Now, my next question to you: how long has DDL been in existence now?
Okay, I can go back. DDL became an entity in 1983 when we merged Guyana Distilleries and Diamond Liquors. And I want to explain the rationale for that because, you know, I've been part of that process. In those days, we had exchange control, and we were given allocation of exchange, foreign exchange, to purchase inputs in one lump sum for both entities. And both entities had different minority shareholders. And I advanced the argument that, you know, we can be vulnerable if shareholders accuse us of discriminating in favor of one and against the other. And the board took that suggestion very seriously and hired Mr. W.G. Stull, then chartered accountant, to develop a proposal to merge these two entities into one. And so Guyana Distilleries and Diamond Liquors in 1983, at their general meeting, the shareholders meeting, passed resolution to merge those two companies into one entity called Demerara Distillers. Prior to then, if I may say this, prior to then, Guyana Distilleries was the Booker's distilling interest, and Diamond Liquors was the Jessel's distilling interest. And they were incorporated in separate entities in the 1940s, thereabout. Prior to then, they were part of the sugar industry.
I'm looking at the structure. You're the executive chairman for DDL.
Mm-hmm.
But some companies will have a CEO and a board. DDL has the same, a CEO as well?
Well, I'm at the moment, I'm CEO and executive chairman, as Dr. Prasad was. There's an executive team of 7 who support me. And in that executive team, there are persons who are being groomed to be successor in the years to come.
Okay. My question before my good friend Charles, well, anyway, Charles, there's an opening for you. You can always ask him to relinquish the CEO position and give it to you. My final question before Charles comes back in. How many employees are employed by DDL presently?
Our group at the moment employs about 1,300 employees.
Wow. Okay. Thanks. Charles, over to you.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Samaroo. Times there are some, and I'll get back to the rum in a minute, but sometimes there is some discussion that DDL has a preference towards employment of one ethnic group against another ethnic group. What would you say to comments like that?
There's absolutely no truth in that. We have a very, very mixed group of people working with the company at both executive, management, and rank and file level. You just visit us one day when we have our staff get together and you will see that. This is a perception, it's a false perception.
And I know, and I say that to Mr. Samaroo because at one time I was working at, what is that, Guyana Stores. And the then Prime Minister, Mr. Hamilton Green, he visited the accounts department. Mm-hmm. And he said to to the team there that there are too many Indians in the accounts department. And that was kind of taken back. And I remember one of the director of Guyana Stores, she became a minister in the Desmond Hoyt administration. And we had a meeting at the Tower Hotel at one time. And she made a statement saying that generally it is a perception that Indians are better accountant or doing better in accounting than other ethnic group. And that created a kind of storm in the room because they said, no, that is not necessarily so. So in terms of, we have seen the Asian countries, they have produced some of the most amazing, managers and so on, not to put down other areas. But I think the reality is you need results, your company need results. And of course, as you rightly said, I was there with you and your company, and I've seen a diverse ethnic makeup of the team. I remember, if I mentioned to you, but one of our managers, he used to spend so much money in his car that, that I complained to you many times that he's overdoing it because of and those things happen sometimes. But I'm glad you put that to rest, that, DDL is a non-discriminatory organization and you employ the best, whoever those persons might be.
I want to say this, that when you are in international trade, as we are, and when you are part of the supply chain of some of the major global companies that subscribe to the highest ethical standards, When you supply countries like the Scandinavians, okay, and we do supply all of them, there are a series of standards that you have to meet, that you have to subscribe to, that you are audited for. And DDL has been successfully audited for all the ethical standards and all the required standards that meet the social requirements of the leading companies in the world and the leading countries that have very high social and ethical standards, like the Scandinavian countries. I'm very proud to say that.
And that's good news. And I remember even your master blender, they're non-Indians. They're not, you have a diverse group there as well in your uptake. But let's get back to the rum. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the value-added product in bottled rum. Of course, DDL created history when you produced that, 25-year-old, and then you had 15-year-old and 25-year-old, and then 50 years old rum. And I think that took the market by storm. Without giving away too much secrets, which one of your product or products are the most profitable in DDL or group of products?
Obviously, the age rums as a group, as a category, what we call the deluxe portfolio, which is the 12, 15, 21, 25. That is the deluxe ultra premium portfolio. There's a premium portfolio, 3, 5, and 8. And then we have a standard portfolio, which we have now rebranded Diamond Reserve. So the Eldorado name is preserved for the premium and the super premium segments. And Diamond Reserve is the value segment of the market. The super premium segments are obviously the most strategically important, the fastest growing, and from a ROI basis, the most profitable.
And I think I know Dr. Rose and Sis Narayan Singh, the CEO of Gaisuko, we are all close friends, and I think he followed your pattern. He went value added at Gaisuko, and I think they're doing pretty well with that value added product. And I think he imitates you quite a bit in terms of getting things done. I know you mentioned the Guyana, what you're developing in Guyana is. Are you getting into the oil and gas sector?
No, I would say yes and no. We are developing areas of technical competences because our business and its growth required a certain level and certain areas of technical competences in IT, for example, in engineering, in the digital technology and stuff like that. And to the extent that those services can be used and there's a market for them in the oil and gas sector, we are interested. But as a primary focus of oil and gas, it is not, we are not, it's not part of our focus right now.
Will DDL have a mega farm or mega farms?
Our preference will be to contract farmers to outsource the agriculture side of the cultivation. But if that is not proving to be adequately reliable and adequate in terms of volume to supply the industrial capacity we are putting up, we will definitely have to look at backward integration. As I said, in the dairy sector, we realized that given the knowledge of the Israelis in terms of the productivity of the animals, right, and the number of liters they could get from one cow, we realized that to be competitive in the dairy sector, we need to bring know-how, which the Israelis have. And that is why we are partnering with them. Obviously, one of the things that underlie everything that we do is the competitiveness. Right? We have to be internationally competitive at the farm level, at the processing level, and at the marketing level. If we are not, you cannot build a successful business.
And I'm asking that question with Samaroo because, and I'm not bashing farmers, I think farmers are doing a great job for our country, but sometimes farmers can play double-edged sword, if that's the right word to use. You finance them for their products, and then when the product is ready, they give it to someone else who might give them a little higher price. And that's why I'm asking maybe the backward integration where you get into mega farms. So at least you have a constant supply of your product in addition to what the farmers also will produce.
Yes, well, I want to give the farmers a first chance. And if what they're supplying and their reliability and consistency do not support the industrial goals that we have, then we will certainly look at another model, which could be either, getting into cultivation ourselves or more contract farming on land that we may lease and contract them to cultivate. There are different models that we can look at. But I have a totally open mind, and I prefer to go into that backward integration a bit more slowly and use our core competences in manufacturing and focus in that area.
Mr. Samaroo, I mean, I worked with you in 1990 to 92, and you have not changed. You still have that methodical way of doing things that I really got to take my hat off to you. I mean, I know I had some problems with DDL in terms of what I thought was not too right at that time, but naive as I was, I believe that your way of doing things has proven to be very, very successful. And for that, again, I take my hat off to you. Now, instead of Guyana, you also have some Caribbean investment. Are you planning to do other, I know you have something in St. Kitts, I believe. Is there any other plans to go other territories within CARICOM or the Caribbean?
Yeah, we our success to a large extent in Europe and the US has been as a result of the fact that we have established our own marketing subsidiaries. We have a marketing subsidiary in Holland that manages the entire European market. And if we did not do that, we would not have gotten the attention from contracted distributors. In the US, when we tried to market a 15-year-old rum retailing at the time at $20, everybody thought it was too expensive because a bottle of rum was $5. And because we couldn't get an importer, we were forced to establish our own subsidiary, Demerara Distillers USA. And fortunately, that has been the vehicle that is responsible for our success. We are looking at the Caribbean, and as we widen the range of our products, if it requires for us to have distribution presence in the various territories to penetrate those markets, it will be a strategic move that will be made at the appropriate time. But I like to be, methodical, to have the base. So when you make that move, it's a successful and profitable move.
Are you looking at another energy problem in Guyana? Is a big problem. Even recently, last week, I believe we were reading in the news that there was massive blackout again. Is DDL going into the way of solar generation or whatever it is?
Yes, it's part of our plans. At the moment, as you know, we generate our own power, all of our power, because our distillation process is a 24 hours continuous process, and we could not rely on the national grid. We have been looking at, different approaches, and we have acquired some land at Diamond, which was intended to establish a solar farm. We're still in the stage of evaluating and developing the model, but definitely it is something that is on the cards. I also want to say that when we invested in the biomethanization plant, for example, where we use the waste from the distillery to produce methane gas, and we've replaced 50% of the bunker seed that was used to generate steam for the distillation process. So we have been looking at alternative energy and renewable energy, as the case might be, and solar power is certainly one of the approaches that is very much on the cards.
And I know, Mr. Samaroo, you have been really privileged to have some of the greatest engineers in Guyana to work with DDL, and they have really done a marvelous job in doing exactly what you said there. Are you looking at wind for renewable energy as well, or just the solar?
We are just looking at solar. Wind is not on our cards at the moment.
Okay.
Having said that, though, as you know, there is a gas to shore project, and based on what has been put in the media, there could be a significant reduction in the cost of power from about 30 cents to about 15 cents. Assuming the distribution is reliable, we'll have to wait for that time to see. Then that could also be another source. But we are looking at solar in a definite way. Wind is not on the cards.
I'm glad you mentioned that gas to the shore pipeline, because a former DDL employee sent me a question, and I know you don't want to dive into politics, Ms. Samaroo, but the question the person asked was that, do you believe government is capable of making sound investment decision? And I know you don't want to say, not necessarily this government, but any of our government in the past, have they been able to make sound investment decision in your view?
That's a question that I will not want to comment on.
Yeah.
I don't think I've made it an area of study to make authoritative pronouncements on that. But the public record are there for everybody to read and see.
Yeah, and I think government should, as we said, get out of the way of managing. Well, they govern the country, but get out of the way of the productive sector and let the private sector do that.
I think when a project has to pay its way and it goes through rigorous cost-benefit analysis and evaluation method, looking at discount cash flows and all of that, the way we do in our business, because if we invest a sum of money and it does not generate that cash, it dilutes the earnings of the company.
Precisely.
And so there's a certain rigor that it goes through because you have to optimize your return on capital. And that approach by whoever happens to be the promoter of a project is what I would recommend.
And that is I'm not about Guyana government alone, but generally government around the world, they really squandered taxpayer money, in my view. Where the private sector, as you rightly said, there need to be a rate of return. So you will have all these feasibility studies, you will have all the models to see what your cash flow is going to be, what the generation of revenue is, what the possible expenses are, and then work out a net present value to see if it meets the company's objective in terms of what they want. But of course, government have unlimited funds apparently to spend, not only Guyana, but around the world. You said you're having your executive who are understudying you to take on the responsibility of the corporation. I know you were a managing director before you became chairman. And as a managing director, you were in charge of the operations. Is that broken up now, or there's still a managing director?
No, there's not a managing director that manages the corporate. Right? We do have a managing director that focuses on a particular area of expansion. But we have an executive team that they pretty much run the business on a day-to-day basis. I focus a lot on strategy and on international trends that I help to guide and counsel them so that they could always update and revamp their approaches to keep it relevant to the circumstances in which we operate. I am not engaged in routine operational matters. I am basically the big picture guy on strategic and international trend, and to see how international best practice can be adopted in our business.
You mentioned that Puerto Rico and British Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, are the prime supplier of alcohol to the United States. What are the other rum-producing countries are doing about it? Is there anything that your guys are pushing back? Maybe U.S. Congress, maybe I don't know who is responsible for that, but what is going on there?
Well, as the West Indian Rum and Spirit Producers Association, which we are a member, has over the years employed lobbyists to deal with this matter. I myself have gotten quite deeply engaged in this matter, but it is such a major political issue. It is not an issue that the US administration can deal with. It's an issue that the Congress has to deal with. And I was reading an article quite recently where there is an initiative by the congressman Mr. Menendez, and another congressman, I think Dr. Cassidy, who are advancing a bill late last year to make the cover over permanent, because their constituency from these territories are important to them. And so they are moving to advance that to make it a permanent. We have examined various options, including whether the arrangement is compatible with the WTO rules.
Yeah, yeah.
And given the fact that the US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico can be considered part of the US, it is an internal arrangement. Now, to the extent that the subsidized material is consumed in the US, you do not have a case. But to the extent that it is exported to other territories, then it's a violation of the WTO rules. However, to prove such a case and to find the resources to argue such a case at the WTO without any certainty of winning, it is beyond the means of the rum producers of the Caribbean.
I got you.
That is the harsh reality.
I know. That's the reality. The strategy then, I think, if you can recall, Mr. Samaroo, when Mr. Turindurga came from Suriname and took over the rice industry, he found that OCT route through one of the islands in the Caribbean. And they were shipping from Guyana to Curacao, and they were doing some work in Curacao and then ship it to Europe free of taxes. Are you looking at integration maybe with the US Virgin Islands, maybe with Puerto Rico, even though they are not part of, CARICOM or anywhere else? Is there any opening in that respect?
Well, therein lies a further problem, because the rules of Puerto Rico is that they can import cheap rum, distill wherever, age it for a year, and then classify it as Puerto Rican origin and benefit from cover-over arrangement. To benefit from such an arrangement, you need to have large production capacity of domestic available molasses, because the prices for those things are very low. No country in the Caribbean can produce to meet that kind of criteria.
I got you. Dr. Rose?
Mr. Samaroo, in the public service, the retirement age is 55. Does DDL have a retirement age?
We have a retirement age of 60.
60?
Yes.
Now, do you believe that retirement aging at 60 is still young, given all the modern medical advancement these days? Do you think the retirement age in Guyana and the Caribbean should be at least 62? Well, in Trinidad, it's 62.
Well, although our age is 60 for the pension purposes, an employee who chooses to go off at 60, gets his pension. But in cases where the employee has a desire to work, enjoys good health, and has a skill set that the company will benefit from, we have retained several persons after they pass the age of 60, based on a needs basis. But an employee has the option of going off at 60 and get his full pension.
Now, as you know, I'm a professor, I'm an educator. Does DDL provide scholarships for its employees or their employees' children?
First of all, the only way we could have met the human resource needs of this company over the years with a high rate of migration that we have had was through several programs of training. We, first of all, employ high school graduates. They work for a few years, and then they're given scholarships to go to university, right? We employ, in addition to that, each year we employ a number of university graduates, newly graduated person from the university, as management trainees. So they come in and they're apprenticed to senior managers, and over time they evolve to be senior managers themselves. Okay. Through the DDL Foundation, we provide scholarships to the leading high school for those students who graduate who at common entrance, who qualify at common entrance to those high schools, but cannot afford. So at the moment, we have about 30 students attending the leading high schools in Guyana, funded by the DDL Foundation. Some of these students do come back and work with us. And in fact, at the moment, we have one of those students who benefited from the foundation scholarship, went through high school, worked with the company as a lab technician, and is presently attending university to be graduating as a chemist in a few years. So we do a lot of training. Apart from that, we train people on the job, both in the technical and administrative areas. Okay, so there's a lot of training that takes place in the group.
Guyana is expanding due to its oil discovery. Is DDL expanding to meet the demands for the influx of tourists or workers into Guyana?
Expanding in terms of product or in
its operation, yeah, to supply the demand, more liquor, more whatever you're producing.
Absolutely. We have a very aggressive and very significant investment program. Every year, we invest in expansion, we invest in modernization, we invest in diversification. Our investment in the last 2 years averaged somewhere in the region of 25 to 30 million US dollars a year in capital expenditure, expanding and equipping this group to compete way into the future.
Now, I'm going to ask you a tricky question here, but you don't have to answer it. How profitable is DDL? And how long it has been profitable?
Okay, well, our annual results, our shareholders meeting will be held in a couple of weeks. And our 2021 results are now public. And I can say that our after-tax profit was 4.9 billion Guyana dollars. And if I go back to 2011, 10 years ago, it was 1.5 billion. So over the last 10 years, it has trebled. So, that gives you some yardstick to measure the profitability and the growth and profitability over the years.
I've always heard DDL is a very good company because I have a couple of cousins who are working there. Does DDL give bonuses at Christmas to its employees?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. At Christmas time, employees get vouchers to get free product. They get bonus. They get staff get together. Yeah, we treat our employees well. We value them. And we believe that part of our success is due to a very motivated workforce that we have. I have to tell you this, that we are probably the only company in Guyana that has a 5-year collective agreement with the unions. We've just last year signed our second 5-year, right, that caters for continuous increases, predictable increases over years, And so we believe that we must treat our employees well, and they must be able to plan their future being part of the company, both in terms of their earning capacity and in terms of their growth potential for promotion and positions that they are equipping themselves to take advantage of.
Okay. The question about when it comes to private companies, it's always more of a calling card for people to work because the salary is always more and so forth. But given today's cost of living increases, as companies responded to this by increasing the workers' salaries or wages? DDL, for example.
Yeah, well, our agreement with the union requires us at the end of each year to do a staff appraisal and to award increases based on performance. And the scales that we have agreed over 5 years is escalated year from year. So what it was last year, it's different this year, it will be different next year, and so on. So they benefit both from the minimum going up as well as from the increase based on performance appraisals. So I can say at this time, I've come across several employees who came up to me and said, "Sir, thanks for the increase. I didn't even realize that our HR department has processed it and that they were given increases already."
DDL is a member of the Private Sector Commission, am I right?
No, we are not.
You're not?
No.
Why?
Well, we choose at this time not to be a member of the Private Sector Commission. We are a member of the Guyana Manufacturers Association, which is much more functional body that that we can address the issues that we want to engage the authorities about. You know, I don't think that the Private Sector Commission is the agency that we wish to be a member of at this point in time.
Wow, I didn't know that. I thought most large companies were members of the Private Sector Commission, but this is news to me. Now, when you look at DDL, and you might not like me mentioning Banks DIH, Gaisuku. I think Gaisuku is the second largest employer in a company in Guyana after the government. Where DDL stands?
At 1,300 employees, I think there are several employers who probably would be greater than we are. The rice sector, there are some really big operators. I don't know, I don't have a count, but we would be amongst the top employers. I mean, there are not many employers who have more than 1,000 employees. Ourselves and, you know, Banks DH and other companies would be in that region.
Charles?
Samaroo, one of the hallmark under your stewardship again is all the employees at DDL became shareholders. I remember when I was there in '92, I didn't realize I was a shareholder until I see shares that I have shares in DDL, because I think what I can remember is that DDL did an arrangement with Demar Mutual Life, I believe, and they financed the purchase of shares for employees, and the dividend was paying back for those shares until it was paid off, and then the employees got their dividend. So that was really a great thing under your stewardship there, that all the employees, so you're not only working there, but you're part owner of the company. So you will give your best, and I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah.
Has it created a lot more benefit, synergy than you anticipate?
Yeah, way down in the 1980s, we started, you know, we got the government at the time to agree for us to make a number of shares available to the employees. And myself and the managing director of GTM met and worked out a very innovative model whereby the insurance company would grant an endowment life insurance policy for the employees over 10 years. And based on my calculations, the dividends would have been adequate to pay the premium on that life endowment policy and a loan to cover the cost of the shares. So in 10 years, the shares are fully repaid. And if the employees happen to die before, their family benefit from the shares because it would have been fully paid up with the policy maturing. And that really, you know, was a very important and significant development that happened in the 1980s. And in the 1990s, we also convinced the then president, Dr. Jagan, and he agreed, and we did the same thing. So I think that was a very important step in getting people, getting employees committed to the company because they feel they are part of the organization.
Without doubt. I want to get into a very sticky, messy part, Mr. Samaroo, is that with the local consumption of alcohol, and DDL get blamed for men battering their family and everything else. Do you think DDL has a responsibility in that?
Well, you know, one of the things that we can do is to regulate the consumption, how people consume alcohol. But as a company, as a producer, we follow the principles of responsible marketing of alcohol. Through the West Indian Rum and Spirit Producers Association, we subscribe to a responsible marketing code of conduct. And the West Indian Rum and Spirit Producers subscribe to an international code of conduct where certain marketing norms are followed. For example, we do not advertise alcohol on television. For years, we have not done that, right? And there are other things that we try to do. On the labels, you will see symbols that signify pregnant mothers should not be drinking, and should not drink and drive, and those things. We advocate, and when I assumed the role of chairmanship of this company at the very first press briefing when Dr. Prasad handed over to me, I had a similar question. And I said there and then that we do not advocate for the irresponsible consumption of alcohol. Everybody must decide what they consume and how responsible they consume it. Right? So I wouldn't say that we push people to the point of drinking excessively so that they go home and abuse their family or do anything that is wrong. We provide a product and we advocate that consumers should use the product responsibly.
Would you recommend that the government, because they get a lot of consumption tax from your product as well, that they put aside some of that to help those people who might have those problems?
Yes.
Is that something you're advocating?
Yeah, absolutely. There's social work that could be done there, and certainly, you know, the authorities should look at that area. And if there are public authorities or private charities doing it, we are prepared to support those efforts.
Okay. I have in my hand here this great book. Mm-hmm. You know this young man very well.
Absolutely, yes.
Reaching for the Stars. Mm-hmm. When will we have one with Mr. Komal Samaroo, his biography?
I don't know. Right now, I'm so busy, you know, trying to navigate all the storms that are, you know, in the path as we go forward, that it is not something anywhere near my mind right now. Just don't have the spare mental energy to dedicate to things like that. Right.
I know Dr. Prasad really made some part of his book very livid, and he gave you experience in England. And, you know, he talked about different things. When he came back to Guyana, he working with the Revenue Authority and so on, and then he moved into Samuch Parker. So I think your history with Samaroo will be just as interesting as Dr. Prasad.
But what I can say is that I know he left a manuscript of his second book, and we have commissioned somebody to edit that, and I'm hoping that we should have for him his second part of his biography at some time.
So after that, we'll have a biography of Mr. Komal Samaroo. Mr. Samaroo, Dr. Prasad, as you know, dabbled a little into, I don't know if it's politics, but he was on the Guard platform I believe in the late 80s. And of course, for that, he was hammered by the then government. Is Komal Samaroo ever thinking of getting into politics?
Absolutely not. I have in my years working with Dr. Prasad, he's been he's never hesitated to express his view, be it on political or other matters. And I've seen at very close range the consequences of making those statements. I have lived very close to those after effects. You know, and I want to say that at this point in time, given the amount of energy that has to go into building this business, making those statements and having energy dedicated to deal with the after effects is not something that is anywhere close to my mind. So I keep, as a person, as a business manager, business executive, I keep very clear of politics and political statements. I have my own views. I may express them to you over a drink, but I'm not going to go public.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, Skipper, but and you don't have to answer the question either. If you were to rank our politicians from the days of Forbes Burnham to now, would you want to do that, or you prefer to leave it aside?
I wouldn't want to do that at this point in time. No. Maybe at a future date, I will sit down and reflect when I have the time, and based on my interaction with some of them, I will be able to come up with a very objective. You know, as a professional, one of the things I remember when I was doing my final exam, and the professor really hammered into me. He said, as a professional, your opinion matters, but your opinion must be based on objective facts. And I try to be as objective as possible in whatever pronouncement and whatever decision I make. At a time when I would have had chance, maybe when I retire, to put my foot up and reflect on you know, the leadership and so on, I will then be able to form an opinion. And at that stage, Charles, you can contact me. I'll share it with you.
I definitely will. Mr. Samaroo, you know, as I said, for the audience, I was at DDL in 1992, and I remember in those years, our profit, as Dr. Rose asked, how profitable is DDL? Our profit in those years was just over 100 million Ghana dollars. In 1991, I believe, our profit was just over 100, I think it was 121 million, if I'm correct. So to come from 121 million to 4 billion, you know, in a short period of time, that is extraordinary work and you know, and the progress at DDL. Now, how do you see DDL in the next 10 years?
I believe that the growth trend we saw in the last 10 years will continue into the future. Based on the investments, based on the position in the market, based on the strategic steps that we have taken, I think the company will be on a growth path that will continue in the future.
In other diversification, I mean, other integration, forward and backward integration, you're looking at?
In all aspects of its business, both its core business in rum, beverages, and in the other things. As I said, every investment we make, we go through real critical and serious evaluation to make sure that there's a path to profitability, and profitability that earns a return that does not dilute the earnings of the company too significantly.
Do you see DDL being established bigger in, let's say, Linden with the Mabura Road coming on stream, or Berbice with the Deepwater Harbor, with Essequibo maybe? I don't know. Do you see DDL expanding its wings into those communities?
Absolutely. We need to have a national footprint. And as we expand our distribution business and other businesses, you know, we are prepared to invest in Guyana. This is our home country. This is our base. And whatever we do in any other place, it is to advance and make our business that is based here. The equity that accrues to DDL as its values grow accrues to Guyana.
And I got to ask you this question. So you see former employees coming back home to support your great venture ahead? I know you have some great employees. I know in Canada, quite a bit of your employees went to Canada. Yes. Of course, some here in the US, some went to different parts of the world. Would you be accepting former employees coming in to work with you to get into some of those areas?
Absolutely, yes. So once there's a need for the skill set of people who have worked with the company, former employees, absolutely. We have no policy that would prevent us from doing that, engaging former employees, right? Obviously, it has to be we wouldn't create a position for a former employee, but once there's a need and there's an opening and there's somebody that has that skill set, by all means, absolutely.
Because some of your employees, Mr. Samaroo, they came to different parts of the world and they have enhanced their skills as well. So they might have additional skills in addition to what they were there. So maybe they might be an asset to DDL as they move on. Dr. Rose?
Mr. Chairman, politics has played a role in everybody's life in every country, in every business. Did politics play any role in DDL investment in the past? And looking into the future, does DDL concerned about which political party is in power, or it will go ahead and do its business as normal?
Okay. Well, as you know, as I said earlier, DDL, with the nationalization that took place in the mid-70s, and the state being the majority shareholder for that period of time, inevitably politics was a part of life. I recall having to go to the ruling party general council meeting, right, as a senior manager. And a couple of times Dr. Prasad not there, and they call on you to speak. And I remember I went up once and I said, Mr. Chairman, and the then President Burnham said, you're fine. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, Mr. Chairman, until one of the ministers said, you have to say comrade. So politics was a factor of life. And having lived through that era, to see politics and its interaction in business, right? And that what drives the political person is not what drives the business person. And having seen then my former chairman making political statements and facing consequences from all sides over time, I had to sit down as I assumed this job and rationalize what I should do and how I should react. And I recognize that amongst our shareholders are persons from all political persuasion. And therefore, I have rationalized to myself that while I'm chairman, and I've been appointed chairman from the 1st of January 2014, I will make business decisions and strategic decisions based on public policy pronouncement. I will not try to influence public policy because that could lead to differences of opinion, and the tolerance level for difference of opinion, as you know, varies. And I thought that as a business person, I should develop a strategic toolkit that gives me a range of strategies that could deal with any policy that any government presents out there. And that has been my approach to this business.
In Guyana, there are lots of businessmen, very smart businessmen. If you had to choose 3 to give an A rating to, which 3 would you choose?
Well, there are some very successful companies. I mean, I would say the finance group of companies is a very successful group. The Banks DIH is a very successful company. Those are 2 that comes to my mind quite readily. You know, the others, the Gafour's group.
What about DDL?
Sorry?
What about DDL?
Well, you know, I can't be flying my own. That's for others to judge, you know.
Now, you said you're the chairman for Samaroo Bank?
Yes. When after Dr. Prasad died, the board of directors elected me chairman.
Who owns that bank?
It's a public bank. Its shares are widely held. DDL is one of the shareholders. I am personally one of the shareholders. When the bank was formed in 1994, we were given opportunities to subscribe to shares. So it's a public company traded on the stock market.
Does it lend money to business, private citizens, or people who want to home homes and so forth? Does it?
All. It has a very wide portfolio. Large businesses, medium businesses, small businesses, consumers, homeowners.
What is the going interest rate?
I think that the lower you could get between 8, maybe 7.5 to 12%, somewhere between there, depending on the risk profile.
You know, to open up a bank account, Republic Bank has made some ridiculous proposals for people to have. They should have a letter stating that they're living at this place. They should have this ID and so forth. What are the requirements for one to open up a bank account at the Samaroo Bank?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not operating staff, so I don't know. But I do know, what I do know is that we have a policy that we must make it very easy to the consumer. Okay, and I've been assured by the CEO that we make it as easy as possible for people to open new accounts while following all the regulations by the various authorities in Guyana.
Is the CEO the gentleman from India, or?
Yes, Mr. David.
So he is the chairman of Gaisuku board.
He's the chairman of Gaisuku board. Yes.
Okay. I now can put a link, make the connection there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the Samaroo Bank of itself is among one of the, I guess, the largest banks in Guyana, and has been operating there for a number of years, if I'm not mistaken. But the question to me is this. You know, there's always a saying that banks demand certain criteria from certain ethnic group and so forth. You may not know this, but does the Samaroo Bank has any policy of fairness when it comes to providing loans?
Absolutely. There is no discrimination on the basis of ethnicity or sex or anything. It has to be a loan based on the credit criteria and security where that is required, regardless of the person. So it is against the policy to discriminate against anyone on the basis of their ethnicity or gender.
Coming back to DDL, I know it's been a very successful company over the years and until today, because my good friend Charles has told me this. But Charles did ask you 10 years from now, and you said the same thing that happened 10 years ago. But you think that's a fair assessment? 10 years ago, things might be far different from 10 years in the future.
Yeah, I said the same growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years, I am projecting a similar trend going forward. So the fact of the matter is, circumstances change all the time. Markets change all the time. Successful businesses evolve to take advantage of those changes and avoid the pitfalls. Right. So I do believe that the future leaders of this company, having operated in an environment that we have over the last 10 years, do understand the methodology and the approaches and the strategies that they should adopt as you go through each year. Nobody can predict the future. The future, you can make assumptions. You can assume certain things will happen, and you can plan on the basis of that assumption. But certainty that it will happen? No, it's impossible.
You don't have to name names, but the same way Mr. Prasad saw you as someone who could anchor DDL, have you got someone in mind who could replace you at some future time?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. That's very good. Now, my one question I want to ask, and this is a troubling, not really troubling. DDL has been operating, as you said, X amount of years ago. Now, you have given workers pension at that time, but when you look at today's inflation and cost of living and so forth, the pension they were receiving then, let's say 10, 15 years ago, cannot sustain them today. Has DDL gone back to look at these workers' pension to see how they can give them an increase or something of the sort?
Okay, so the pension scheme is administered by a set of trustees. There are sets of rules, and there are the annual actuarial valuation. And we have gone in the past, and every so many years, to our actuaries to ask them to, based on the strength of the scheme, how can we increase the minimum pension of our pensioners? So we have made adjustments from time to time. Given the inflation over the years, ask me, is it adequate? Everybody can do with more. But as far as the scheme is concerned, it is based on the actuarial valuation of the ability of the scheme to meet its future liabilities from the assets that it has. And we have made adjustments in the past, and we will continue to make adjustments going forward in the future.
Okay. Now, you know cricket is the leading sport in Guyana. It is. Then soccer and then other sports.
Mm-hmm.
As DDL support, what sporting events have DDL been supporting in Guyana, if it supports any at all?
We support a whole variety of sports. I mean, and it goes in our annual report on our social responsibility. We are one of the largest sponsors in a whole number of areas. But one major area has been, the CPL. Since it started, we have been one of the sponsors, and we have just entered into an agreement again to be a sponsor for the next few years. But we support many, many other sports and many, many other social activities in Guyana. As a large corporate entity, we take that responsibility very, very seriously.
We come to the closing event. Charles, over to you.
Yeah, we are right now. Mr. Samaroo, just Mr. Dr. Rose's edification, Demar Bank has been the only indigenous bank that has been established in Guyana. Is that correct?
Private sector indigenous bank.
Private sector.
Don't forget the Co-op Bank was a state bank.
Yeah, that was a state bank, yeah. Will there be Isu Pasad Day at DDL?
Well, it's possible. I mean, it's only been, 3 months now since Dr. Prasad passed away. We are still coming to grips, with the fact that he's not around. He's been an overwhelming figure in our group since it all came together in the mid-70s. So while I don't have a direct answer, I will say that anything is possible.
Can I recommend to you as chairman, on behalf of all the former employees at DDL, that you discuss with your board to set aside a day for our former chairman? He has been a tower of strength and a real great unifier. Everyone everyone that I knew was very touched by his passing, and it would be a great honor if DDL can set aside a day in his remembrance. And I know you will do that for us, Mr. Chairman.
I certainly will take your suggestion. As a former employee of DDL, Charles, I will take that forward and do my best. I like the idea, and I will certainly take it forward.
Thank you very much. We can reflect on his past. Ms. Samaroo, it has been a great honor for us to have you this evening. Time has run out on us, program time, but you have informed our audience. You have told us what DDL has been doing, what DDL will be doing, and we want to wish you and the company every great success in the future. We know that with you being there, I know Dr. Prasad has gone, but you being there, DDL is in great hands, and we want to wish you all the best. So thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. I just want to share one other bit of information. I've just been looking through the central bank report for last year, and I'm pleased to tell you that rum and other spirit exports now from Guyana is number 5 after oil and gas, gold, rice, bauxite, alcoholic beverage.
Export earners?
Export earnings.
Wow, that is amazing.
So just want you to know that we have now, built an industry that is a significant earner of foreign exchange.
Kudos to you, sir.
That's fantastic.
All right, Mr. Samaroo, in closing, anything else you want to tell our audience before we go tonight?
Well, I want to thank you very much. You have gotten a lot more from me about DDL than I've ever spoken about. But, but I want to say that, I'm happy to share that information with you. DDL and the team there are very committed to build on the foundation that has been laid by Dr. Prasad over the years. And I think we want to be very proud of this enduring Guyanese entity that makes its name around the world. As you know, El Dorado is the one Guyanese brand that you can find in more countries than any other that I can think about. And we want to keep building on that in the future.
Thank you. Dr. Rose, anything in closing?
Yes, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Samaroo, for being our guest tonight. And you shed a lot of light. At least I'm being enlightened by DDL. I did not know anything much about DDL at all. All I know to produce El Dorado rum, but you mentioned a number of other things it produced. So I now know that DDL is a very, very viable company, and maybe it's second to none in Guyana. So I must thank you for being on the show tonight. And as I said, you're the first business executive we ever had on this show. I have to make contacts with some others to come on to hear what they have to say as well. And at this time, I will say that you have done a tremendous job. Thanks.
And before we go, I want to let the audience know, one of our meetings with Mr. Samaroo as MD, that's managing director, he said I remember vividly at that meeting, he said, if a wall is cracked, you can do 2 things. You can take mortar and start and paste it up, but eventually the wall is going to fall down. Or you can correct the foundation and the wall will be there for another 100 years. I remember that as if you said it yesterday, Mr. Samaroo. And that has been a great lesson. We want to thank you again. We want to thank Dr. Rose. We want to thank our audience. And we want to thank everyone else. And again, for all our Muslim family, Eid Mubarak greetings. And we hope that God will continue to bless Guyana. And of course, Mr. Samaroo, God bless DDL to continue from strength to strength. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.